Welcome everyone. I am super excited today to talk to Rachel Russo. We're going to be talking about attraction and dating and how to find someone who you can fall in love with for the long term. My guest today, Rachel Russo, I would love to introduce her. Rachel, could you tell us what you do and kind of why you do it?
Sure. Thank you for having me here, Kyle. I'm excited to be a part of this. And I have been a matchmaker and a dating coach for 14 years. It's been my full-time job. I've been speaking about it, writing about it, having events for singles. All people that are relationship-oriented are those that I work with, and some couples as well. But I'm all about helping people find and keep love. And why do I do it? Because I think it's one of the most important things in our lives that has so much to do with our level of happiness. Being in the right relationship can either make us happier than ever or more miserable than ever.
Yeah.
And I believe this is the stuff that keeps us up at night. So I have dedicated my whole career to it, and now I have my own company doing matchmaking and dating relationship coaching. So I'm very happy with doing that.
Perfect. Well, I'm so excited because we're really going to be talking about how to find someone, where to find someone, how to pick them out, what types of questions to ask. And in this conversation, Rachel and I are really going to go deep in getting you the answers you need for finding that person who's going to be a great fit for the long term. All right, let's go ahead and begin. So the first question I wanted to explore with you, Rachel, is what are some common troubles people have in finding someone to fall in love with?
So one issue that I see a lot lately is overwhelm of options due to all of the dating apps and online sites. So people are having trouble making choices as to who is the best partner for them. So they're just overwhelmed, and sometimes they stop communicating with someone who could be a perfectly good fit just because they're talking to others. So knowing who to hone in on as a compatible match is a big thing. And I find that people get distracted sometimes by chemistry. And they think, okay, let me pursue with this person because we have this spark right away, we have this physical attraction, but that takes them down a bad path. So I see a lot of people going down bad paths because of the indecision and also the feelings of chemistry.
Yeah, I'd love to actually separate that a little bit too. So let's kind of talk about the indecision, because there seem to be so many options. And I know it can be so exhausting because you go on a date with someone and then you're leaving the date and you can hop on an app and swipe through 20 more people on your way even to the car. And so there's that overwhelm, they call it like the paradox of choice. By having so many options, you actually choose not to choose. Yes. And you're kind of stuck in this limbo area. So kind of talk a little bit more about why it's so important to maybe give a little bit more effort to one person or to a few people compared to continuing to pursue that idealized person who might be out there or who might not be out there.
Right. Well, what you're describing is that fear of missing out. So a single will swipe like that because they think that there's somebody who's just a little bit better, maybe a little more successful, maybe a little objectively hotter, whatever you want to say, someone a little closer, more geographically desirable. And they keep looking and looking for this elusive kind of perfect person, but it doesn't exist. And these people can be single for years and decades because they're searching for something that's not even real. So I believe that there's probably an 80%, the 80% that we should, I don't know what to call it. I was thinking the 80-20 rule, but if you can get 80% of what you want, that's probably a thing, and you should stop swiping, because I don't know if you're going to get that other 20% in the perfect package that is also going to like you back and want you.
Right. And I think that's so important because kind of from my research on committed relationship and marriages, right, we've discovered that 69%, 70% of problems in relationships never go away because of differences in personalities. And so you're never going to find someone who's perfect. And also what the research shows is we're actually looking for people who are different than us. Yes. Because they help us grow. They develop our personalities better. And it's learning how to manage those differences in a relationship and make it work. That's really powerful. But if you can't get into a relationship, you don't get that. And that's kind of what you're talking about, is that, really choosing to go, okay, this is pretty darn good. Let me give this a shot.
Right.
Which I love. And so that's one big issue. Now let's kind of dive into the chemistry. Tell me a little bit about kind of what happens there and where people get stuck.
Well, I think that many of us have experienced, especially in our young years, that kind of instant attraction where you almost can't keep your hands off someone. Perhaps you lock eyes from across the room, although these days it's usually happening online through a picture. And you feel very drawn to this person. So it's almost intoxicating. It is. And research shows that your brain is sort of similar to being on drugs,
Yep.
on the high cocaine, when you experience the surge of hormones, oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, they call it. And it's not just that you get those hormones from having sexual relations with someone, but even if you're attracted to that person and they grab your hand or look at you a certain way, the oxytocin release is triggered. So that can really, as I was saying, lead you down a bad path and make you believe that you are compatible with this person and this person is the one that you're meant to be with. But I really see chemistry and compatibility as two different things. So what you may have experienced, especially very strong, I say, when people are young, but through all stages throughout the life cycle, you can experience intense chemistry and physical attraction with someone who's completely wrong for you. So finding a bit of both would be ideal. That's hitting the jackpot. But I think that people focus too much on that chemistry. And if they don't feel it on a first date or a second date, they're very quick to dismiss because of all those options. They're very quick to dispose of someone just because they didn't feel fireworks when they kissed. And I think personally, this has actually happened to me, where a guy really grew on me and became my boyfriend. And I will be honest with you, I didn't even kiss him for like 7 dates because I didn't feel it. I didn't even really like him. And it turned out to be a good, positive relationship. So it's happened to me, and I talk to a lot of other people about their relationships, and I have to tell you, some happily married couples will say the same thing. I didn't even like him when I first met him. So if you stick with it, the chemistry can grow. The compatibility needs to be there.
Yes, and I actually totally agree with this. And so I work a lot with insecure clients who they have an anxious attachment style, and so they tend to, and the research validates this, they tend to be attracted to someone who's emotionally unavailable or who's a little bit more closed off. And there's a kind of a counterbalance there. And they get that emotional high of, oh my God, this person who's so distant, they're actually giving me attention now, and I feel so amazing, so it's perfect. And they kind of avoid the red flags or the compatibility for a committed relationship. And then, you know, I see them 27 years later and they're still fighting about the same thing. They feel emotionally distant, and it's just, there's betrayals. And so all those stuff comes up when we don't take hold and honor both. Yeah, there's a little bit of chemistry, it's fun, but also, are we compatible in terms of our values, in terms of where we're going, and in terms of how we manage the issues that come up in the relationship?
Yeah, that's all super important. I'm glad you bring up about the attachment styles. I'm very big on that in working with my clients, and knowing your attachment style and the attachment style of someone you're dating is really important, because some, like the anxious avoidant, are very difficult. So you have to learn to manage that, and someone better become more secure, or it's going to be a situation like you're saying where you may feel chemistry, probably because you're drawn to that familiar pattern. You've been with someone before who had that bad avoidant attachment style, or maybe your father or your mother was avoidant. So that's why you feel this chemistry. But can you learn to feel chemistry with people who are more secure and healthier for you? That's really a question that's worth exploring.
Yeah, well, and it's so important because, you know, even myself and my clients who are anxious, they go on these dates with these people who are secure, and they're kind of like, I'm bored. It's too calm, right? And there's not that emotional roller coaster that you get with the anxious avoidant type of relationship. It's kind of stable. They're pretty clear and direct about what they want. You know, they're very honest or upfront, and you're kind of like, oh, this doesn't feel exciting. But if you give it a chance and you kind of stay with it, it can really build into something meaningful. And then actually the research shows you can actually become more secure yourself by having that type of relationship.
Definitely. I think that's really a good idea. If people can force themselves to give it more time and stick with it and see if they can get through that lack of excitement, they might come out positively on the other end.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to kind of actually build on this. And one of my next question is, so I kind of talk about authentic attraction, which aligns attachment styles, looking for that secure person, values, and things like that. What does that look like as a matchmaker in New York? That's a big city. You have so many options. What does that look like in terms of trying to honor yourself as an individual, be honest with people who you date, honoring your relationship needs, and trying to find that win-win relationship with someone you can commit to?
Well, I think that it's a process, especially in a big city like New York, where most people are unfortunately getting caught up in these serial dating patterns and now experiencing ghosting and all kinds of other dating trends. So when that's happening to you, it is really important to be authentic. Even if the relationship is not something that you see going somewhere after a couple dates, I think to develop authenticity in your love life, you should get into the practice of being honest with people about how you're feeling. So not ghosting, not just disappearing, not thinking, oh, I only had 2 or 3 dates with her or him and I don't owe them an explanation, but actually saying something to the extent of, I enjoyed meeting you and I just think that we lack compatibility because of XYZ, or I just get more of a friend vibe. Tell people the truth, because those are things that you need to start doing when you're in a relationship. And if you never do them when you're single, it's going to be harder to translate. So just honoring what is true for you and being able to express that to other people would go a really long way.
Yeah, and it's so important, and I love what you're saying. It's really honoring your needs and being respectful and having open communication. And I think a lot of people struggle with rejection. They're like, oh, rejection's a really unhealthy thing. For me to tell someone we're not, I feel bad that I'm rejecting this person or that I'm getting rejected. And I hear that, and yeah, rejection sucks. Like, it does suck. And to be honest and direct is really healthy too, because rejection can be a really good thing, because it helps you figure out who's good for you, who's compatible for you. Someone who's rejecting you, that's actually a good thing, because you can realize I don't have to spend more energy into developing a relationship with someone who doesn't want to develop a relationship with me.
Exactly.
And so
it's far worse to be strung along and have someone waste your time and go to the up and down roller coaster. It's like, if you rip it off like a Band-Aid, the rejection may hurt in the beginning, but it's often a blessing in disguise and it's a part of life. So more people that you meet are not going to be for you. If you're into a monogamous relationship, then you're going to only end up with one. So you have to have rejection to get to that one. So I think people need to just accept that.
Yeah, they do. And I think what also you're saying is to really honor your needs too. You talked about compatibility, right? So if you're someone who loves closeness and connection, you're going to have a real tough time being compatible with someone who likes a lot of independence and alone time. And to recognize that compatibility rather than let the chemistry kind of consume the compatibility and ignore it. And that's another thing that I think you've talked about in dating, is really honoring that, what your needs are, what makes a really happy relationship for you, and using that as metrics to find someone who's going to be good for you.
Right. That's the key.
Mm-hmm. Kind of going on to this, one of the things I think that can happen in dating is sometimes there's this authenticity and it can be kind of taken to extreme of, oh, I'm just going to show up how I am. Sometimes I just wear sweatpants all the time, so that's just going to happen and show up on my date. And so there can kind of be an extreme where you're not really showing, dating is kind of, I see dating as an opportunity to show your best self and really show who you are. And I'd love for you to kind of talk about, how does one own their attractiveness? How do they take responsibility for their life and show up and really become kind of the best partner they can be, which improves their chances of finding that person who's going to be a good fit for them?
Okay. Well, I will preface this with saying I do not think you should show up in sweatpants
Yeah.
or without your hair combed or chipped nail polish or anything else like that. You should put your best foot forward, because it shows that you are taking this date seriously and you're doing your best to be attractive. However, it isn't just about the physical. And to fully answer your question, I think we have to look at our lives holistically. And really, a lot of people poo-poo about self-love and self-care and all of that, but it really does start with you. And I believe that you have to look at all areas of your life, from your health to your career and finances, to your friendships, to hobbies. Are you having enough fun in your life? Are you as healthy as you can be? Are you exercising? Are you sleeping properly? Are you actually saving money? Are you constantly in debt? Are you doing a career that you love, or are you miserable every day? You have to get your life in order before you can truly be attractive to someone else. And no, you don't have to be perfect. I'm not giving that message, because I'm sure we can all sit here and say, like, I know someone who found the love of her life at the most vulnerable, horrible time, and she was unemployed and had 2 kids. And so that's not the case. But I mean, there's exceptions. However, if you're not happy yourself, regardless of what your circumstances are, you're not going to be happy in a relationship. So you're still going to be in that same misery, just now with another person. So your life doesn't have to look perfect on the outside, but you have to know what it is that you want in all of these key areas and be working toward that, because it is a journey. So I believe you have to at least be on that journey and happy, content enough with where you are in order to attract someone that you could be happy with.
Totally. And it's so important. And I think what's interesting in dating, when you actually focus on yourself and you actually develop a dating strategy that is an extension of your social life and your personal life, it actually becomes a lot easier. But it really starts in that self-care and even being aware of how you talk to yourself, and developing self-compassion and how you dress, and taking care of your hygiene, of your physical activity, of how you're eating. And sometimes, people they kind of like, oh, whatever, that doesn't matter. But that gets you in a really healthy mindset, and it gets you in a really healthy place. So when you go out on a date, you are really healthy, and you have the healthy boundaries, you have that self-care in place, and it makes you really attractive. And so it's so important to really focus on that and take responsibility for that. One of the things that just came up that I think you highlighted on is there's some of these stories that we have in dating where it's, oh, well, that person was at their lowest low and they found the love of their life. Or, the person's in New York City or Austin, Texas, and they were struggling, but then they met this person at a gas station. Why can't that happen to me? There's these narratives that we have about these really unique stories, and those kind of can dominate our own personal narratives about our relationships. And I'm really curious about your perspective on how to manage those types of things, even that narrative.
Yes, I think about this a lot, actually. So it's not the norm that it's going to work out that way. So my advice would be, do not think that you are the exception to the rule. Some people are on a unique path and they may get lucky, but I do think it is something that's often not within our control. So to think that, because it happened to someone else, it's going to happen to you, it seems silly to me. I think you should prepare to do everything that you want and be proactive. One area that is actually very close to me that I think is super important is women that are in their, I would say, like mid-30s, that are still single, that really have dreams of having children. Now, it's really silly when they're 37, 38, and they're not even dating anyone, and they're not even having a plan to date anyone, and they want to get married and they want to have kids, to sit there and say, well, I knew someone who was 45 that had healthy babies, and she met the guy and it worked for her. Okay, great, but that's not the norm. So if you really want to have children, get a plan. Whether you're doing this with a man the traditional way, or you're considering a sperm donor or IVF or whatever it is, and you have to be realistic. You can't think that you're the exception, because it may not work out how you want. And something as important as that, there is a biological clock, there is a time frame, and you have to do it now and stop delaying. That's like my message to all women.
Well, and I think, right, that narrative can become an avoidance strategy, right? Oh, if I just believe this and this will happen to me, then I don't have to put in the effort and be vulnerable to go on these dates, to do these other things that could put me in positions of being rejected, of rejecting other people, of really feeling good emotions, difficult emotions, and experiencing that whole dating process. And that kind of is a way of escaping doing the work of really finding someone who you can really love and have that type of relationship with.
Right. You hit the nail on the head there. I think it's an avoidance strategy, and it is delusional for a lot of people. So people have to face why they don't, and maybe it's that fear of rejection or not being good enough or whatever that they're really avoiding deep down. So they don't really bother to try, and they think it's just going to all work out.
Yep. I totally agree. And so kind of, it feels like we're going in this direction of, so now they're trying to develop the strategy. And this is something I know that you're really good at. Like, where are some of the best places to meet people? And like, I know that the reality is you can't meet the right person if you're in the wrong place. And so where are the best places to meet someone, and how does someone start to develop their strategy to find that type of person?
Well, I liked what you said before, Kyle, about the dating strategy being an extension of you. And I think that is something that can really help you to meet like-minded, compatible people. If you think about, where would the people that I'm interested in be at? And it doesn't, let's say, forget online for a minute, although there's several niche sites and I'm sure we can talk about that, but where can we find like-minded, compatible people that we would easily meet? Well, think about where we go in our everyday life and what type of person we are and what our interests are. You can't really do something that feels completely inauthentic to you and force yourself to do it and expect to attract the right people. So what I'm saying is if you hate nightlife and you don't drink and you don't want to be in bars, well, then that's not your dating strategy. You would be better to go for a couple hours after work, or if you're an entrepreneur, make this part of your work, go to a coffee shop, go to a Starbucks or whatever it is, go to a hotel bar, sit in the lobby and order yourself a tea or whatever during the day, sit on your laptop, read a book, do whatever, and look available and talk to people. Be in the place that's sort of the hotspot cafe in your town, or go to a different town, go to a town where you think, okay, maybe there's more educated professionals in this town and that's who I want. Put yourself where your target market is and do something that you enjoy doing. So don't make yourself do something that you hate. If you're very interested in sports, maybe you can find team sports that you can play or go to certain events, or you can do the same thing for the arts, or even cooking classes. It should really be something that you would be happy doing it anyway. And if you meet someone there, well, that's just a bonus.
Right. Yeah. And that's actually, I love that. I think for guys, there's a big push, especially when you're in your 20s and even early 30s, there's this push, go to bars, go to clubs, right? I always tell my clients, no way. That's not where you're going to find someone. Most people are out there to have fun. That's not where you're going to find a committed partner per se. That's probably the last environment you want to go. But looking at group classes or dance classes, I joined a salsa dance team when I was single, and that gave me a lot of good dates and connections. And I actually met my partner at a gym. Right. Nice. So just being in those places where you're living your life and doing things that you find interesting, or even improv classes, I've done that. And my clients have done that. Those things get you to grow as yourself, but they also put you in places where you're going to meet someone who also values that same type of stuff. Going to the gym, I meet someone who's values caring for their body and looking good. Exactly. Or dancing, someone who loves to move their body and kind of do all that thing. Those environments are really important to think of when you're dating. And so I love that you bring that in, because it really has to be that way. One of the things you and I talked about before was actually kind of cities too, and the subcultures. There's certain cities where it's a lot more just, all right, let's go on a first date, let's hook up, that's it. And then there's some other cities or even suburbs outside of that where your people have a little bit more of a mindset of committed relationships or family orientation. Could you maybe talk about that briefly?
Yeah, so I'm a good example of this because I have been a city girl in New York City for over a decade, and I recently moved out to the suburbs of New Jersey, where I'm originally from. Still in a cool town, Montclair, New Jersey. So there are young professionals and singles and everything here. It's not like everybody's at home married with 5 kids.
Mhm.
So there is still opportunity for singles. And the nice thing is that there's actually less options. So that paradox of choice that would be in the big city, like, when I was dating as a single girl in New York City, is now not here in Montclair, New Jersey.
Mhm.
And I'm finding people who lived in the city and they're kind of like over that, and they want to settle down more and they want a family. And that can be a good thing for women or men who are not necessarily attached to a certain place. Like they can kind of go either way and their living circumstances, and they're open for love. So they're increasing their options in a sense that they're getting outside of their comfort zone, but they're dating people who have less options. And that's actually a powerful thing if you do the city to suburb reverse. A lot of people get stuck on like, okay, there's only singles in the city, but you will find people in the suburbs with a different mentality. You may be finding people that actually were married before, now they're divorced, but you get a very different man, for instance, let's say someone who has been married, who had a couple kids, who's in his 40s, as opposed to a man who's been single for the last 25 years,
Yep.
hooking up with all of New York City.
Mhm.
So I'm just saying there's some appeal. Not that there's anything wrong with settling down later in life, but you do find different people in different areas. And I think it's about being open to both to find out what's best for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of really talk about that as kind of like the demographics of dating, right? Cities and suburbs, there's always different values, and the types of people that live there have different
Right.
subcultures. And that's the same with different businesses or clubs or organizations you join. There's subcultures of values that you really want to look for. Are they in alignment with who I want to become or who I am now? As that's
Exactly.
really going to impact the type of person you're going to attract.
Mhm.
I would love to kind of shift this a little bit to online dating now. And
Okay.
so we're kind of talking about this dating strategy in person, the activities that you can do, in different cities and suburbs. What about online dating? There's
So
so many
we can't
options.
ignore online dating, that's for sure. We can apply the same kind of strategies in the online context. And so there's general sites, right, like match.com, for instance, or the apps like Bumble and Tinder, even Tinder. Some people think just hookups, but I mean, people are finding serious relationships off of them. So those are the general ones, the big ones that a lot of people know about. But there's so many other dating sites that you would not even imagine, like for just specific interests that are out there, these niche sites. So you can kind of use that if you say religion is very important to you, or you mentioned meeting your partner at the gym. They have fitness single sites. So you can do the same thing, find your values and then find a site or app for them. And I know there's spiritual single sites. There's so much. So you really, like, the sky's the limit. Just figure out who you are and then figure out where those like-minded people are online.
Mhm. I love that. I love that. And just like you said, there's so many apps that you can look at. And when you niche down to your values, what you find interesting, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier than being on one of those general sites like Match.com or
Yeah.
OkCupid or Bumble or Tinder, where you don't know a ton about the person, especially those apps where they have like maybe 150 words where they can write a bio.
Exactly.
You're kind of left to the guesswork of who the heck is this person, whereas these specific sites already give you an indicator of what this type of person is interested in. So
Right.
I love that suggestion. I actually want to go back a step to kind of in person. You talked about the Starbucks or going to these coffee shops. I
Uh-huh.
think one thing that I've noticed in working with clients is they'll go into these situations, they'll put on their headphones, they'll be looking at their phone. People will walk by, they might make eye contact, then they look back at their phone and the things are done. What are ways they can give social cues that, hey, come talk to me or I'm available? And how do they tolerate the anxiety that might come up with the discomfort of that? What would be your recommendation?
So I think the first step is to actually look available, not be on your phone, not be looking down, look friendly with open body language. And if you're the one who's approaching, then look for people who look pretty receptive, not the girl who has her arms folded like this and seems like she's having a bad. You're probably increasing your chances of rejection there. So, and now once you identify someone that you say want to approach, I think that you should not come up with some kind of corny pickup line, but again,
Yeah.
just be authentic. So how do we be authentic in those situations? You can always ask someone a question. And if you ask a simple question, this can really help to manage the anxiety of it all. I'm talking about a question that anyone could ask, like not even implying any romantic interest, something that you can ask a woman, say you're a man, you're even in a relationship, so you're not going to be hitting on women in Starbucks. But what if you were to say, oh, have you ever tried that hibiscus tea? Is it actually good? Should I get that? I don't know what to get. You can ask anyone, and your girlfriend or your wife would not be mad, right? So I'm suggesting to do something like that. And I've heard this advice before, and I think that it's good advice, and more people should take it. So a question, an innocent question, goes a long way, or even giving someone a genuine compliment, and then the conversation can just go from there. Just introduce yourself after that, and oh, where are you from? And just start it up like that.
And you can get feedback as that conversation grows, right? I think there's this, there is one approach where you can go straight direct and be very direct about kind of what you're looking for, or you can just start to get to know them and have a small talk and start to get feedback of whether this person is someone you can connect with. And so I've done a mix of both. And I know when I was single, one of the things that I looked at is how can I be vulnerable? Because one of the things I struggled with, I would see someone who was attractive and I want to go talk to them, and I'd start to feel really anxious and overwhelmed. And then I would go ask a question, and they could tell I was uncomfortable. And so I actually would say that I was uncomfortable. I'd say, hey, I had to come over and say hi. I'd be shooting myself in the foot if I didn't stop by. I'm Kyle. And just kind of even acknowledging that this is kind of awkward or a little uncomfortable,
right,
can actually be really attractive, because you're kind of saying, I'm uncomfortable and I'm choosing to connect with you. And see, and a lot of the times the girls were like, I have a boyfriend, or that was really sweet of you, but I have a boyfriend, but that was actually okay because I was being vulnerable and direct. And so that's another thing that, there's those two different ways that you can go. And I would recommend experimenting with both and seeing which style works for you.
I think that's a good idea. If you kind of own it that you're uncomfortable, I think that will resonate well. Like, people like honesty, and worst case scenario, they're taken and they're flattered. Or they're not interested and they nicely tell you. So this is part of the getting into that practice and experimenting with different things so that you're more comfortable with that rejection and you can get yourself up again and try on the next girl.
Exactly. And I think that's, again, going back to that there's if you're looking for monogamy and one person, you're going to have to go through these rejection experiences, or these experiences where you're going to have some conversations that's just part of the process.
That's right.
And letting that be okay, rather than seeing that as something wrong, is really helpful and really healthy. I love to kind of talk about kind of the next step. So they're going out on a date with someone. How do they know someone is a good fit? What should they be really looking for from kind of your eyes?
Well, I think the first thing is trying to find out as soon as possible what type of relationship this person wants. Do they even want a relationship, or are they just, did you meet them on an app because they just broke up with their ex and now they're trying to get back out there? Are they looking for a confidence boost? Let's be honest. Some people do that. They're in the dating scene before they're ready because it's just easy to pick up your phone and start swiping. So you have to assess someone's intentions. And if you feel like they do want a relationship, the next question is, do they want the type of relationship that you do? Do they believe in monogamy and marriage? Do they want to have children? As we said before, I'm talking about that. I really don't think women should waste their time if somebody doesn't want to have children, and men shouldn't waste their time either if they're looking for a partner who maybe wants to travel the world and she wants to stay at home and raise a family. So you have to see what those values are and see if you align with the person you're out with.
Totally. And I mean, that's so important. And there's actually a new book called The 8 Dates. It's actually by Dr. John and Julie Gottman. They did research on couples who just started dating, newlyweds, and couples who have been married for a while. And they're around kind of key conversations of commitment and trust, sex and intimacy, conflict. And you can go in there and read the book and borrow a few of those questions that you can ask during a date and have some fun with them that can give you a good idea of this person, where they're at, and their intention and their hopes and their expectations about kind of where the relationship should go. And I kind of love that you're bringing this up, because when you get clarity on where this person is and what they're doing, it's going to be much easier for you to make a healthy decision on whether you want to invest in this relationship or whether you should leave the relationship. Or even continue to pursue dating them or not continue. Because without that information, you're kind of waiting. And the problem with that is it's very easy during that waiting period of 3 to 6 months that you actually fall in love with someone who you're not compatible with. And so going back to what you talked about earlier, being direct, asking some of these questions, being curious about what they're looking for, what they're wanting, can be really valuable in finding someone who's a good fit.
Right. I think you have to talk about it. I know people don't want to, and that's because there's stigma of like the talk. It doesn't have to be the talk. It could be fun and playful, like the way that you're suggesting, but dating is a process of kind of investigating if this person is compatible with you. It's not just, okay, let's go out and have fun. Like you can have fun for years with someone that you're not compatible with. And if your goal is to be in a committed relationship, you're no closer to your goal. And now you're in love with the person. It's very hard to get out of that.
Right. And I think it's so important to align those values and find that win-win relationship, because you might have a lot of fun with someone who wants polyamory, which is totally okay. And that's their lifestyle and that's what they want. And you don't want that. And that's going to cause a major issue if you try to make that person commit solely to you when that's really not what they want. And so you can say, you know what, it was great dating you. I've had a lot of fun, but there's a pretty serious value and compatibility here.
Exactly.
And I think you need to be dating other people who are into polyamory, and I need to be dating people who are more in my style. There's nothing wrong with either style, but it's finding that win-win that's so important.
Exactly. You really have to make sure it's a match or it's not going to work.
So Rachel, I kind of want to wrap up. I think you added so much value in this and gave us so many helpful tips. How could someone connect with you? Like if they were like, I have a question for you, or they wanted to learn more about you, what would they do?
Sure. So my main website is rachelrusso.com, just RachelRusso.com. And under my contact page, I actually have an online scheduler. So someone can schedule a complimentary consultation with me, just an audio call, and they can certainly email me as well. There's the link to schedule and there's my email address on there, and I'm happy to talk to anyone who's serious about wanting to hire a coach or a matchmaker, or at least get more information about what that would be like to help them with their love life.
Perfect. So you guys know how to reach her. I'll also include that in the notes below. Thank you, Rachel, for joining us, and we'll go ahead and end here.
Thank you. It was a lot of